Once again, we're back in the tavern. And Logan somehow got abducted again and is not here with us tonight. But hopefully we can find him. Hopefully the kidnapper will leave us clues as to where to find him next time, that we can go ahead and get him here in the tavern to hang out with us for our Tavernside talks.
To be fair, I believe it was a premeditated kidnapping. So
Yeah, I think he coordinated
easier
it.
to schedule around those, yeah.
Yeah, I think he coordinated it and then let it happen. So there's that. So
Today's economy, it's hard to get a vacation, so sometimes you need to plan a kidnapping.
or a death. And then,
Oh.
yeah, sometimes you just gotta, yeah, anyway. So tonight, we, so actually in one of the early episodes of Tavernside Talks, I keep messing this up, Building Bigger and Better Worlds, the title of the Tavernside episode on YouTube. We mentioned briefly talking about like how to build cities or how to like world build cities, and I was looking at it, and it was like a 4-minute snippet on the actual video, glossing over cities briefly. And so I was like, well, that didn't do it justice. There's a lot more you can do, and a lot more you can do with cities. The depth, you can kind of expand them out. And honestly, a lot of times D&D storyline stuff is in cities. So it's important to, you know, I feel like make sure that you have, as a DM, kind of building them out, how you do that, and having them interesting, etc., 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 which we'll get into tonight. So I have Connor, of course, the illustrious Connor. And then good to see you, Eric. Good to see you, Nathan, in the chat. Always a pleasure to have the home team here supporting. Thank you guys for being here. All right, so cities, building memorable cities. So the first thing, and I'll kind of jump into it here, the first thing I consider generally when I build a city starting off is the geography around it. And I was curious as to if that is similar in how you do it, or if that is kind of adjusted, or how you go about doing it.
Actually, I was thinking about this earlier, because it does feel like geography is a huge thing for me when I make places. But the only thing I'll say is slightly different is I think a lot about the internal geography of like what the city is.
Yeah.
And sometimes, because sometimes the city comes before the landscape, right? Like sometimes
Oh, yeah,
the parties
100%.
go into, you know, like the Drakenhold, and that sounds, oh, that's a cool sounding city. I wonder what's there. I'm like, shit, me too, man. That's I got a couple sessions to figure that out. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So the environment might fit the city. So oftentimes, and what kind of helps with that is sometimes I like a very distinct aesthetic with the city, and normally I'll use geography to do that. Like perhaps it's in a valley, it's like it's a bridge, you know, between two peaks, or you know, it's whatever it is that sounds aesthetic to you. You know, then the environment around there can make it either fit in or sometimes very much not fit into the landscape, depending on what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a big thing too. Is cities do, I feel like, in a way, kind of build a lot of the worlds. I think it's I like that point that you brought up. Where yeah, sometimes it'll be the other way around. You'll have a city name, you'll have a city idea, and then you're like, okay, let's put this here, and then build up kind of around it as well. Kind of a big instance actually that I used this kind of It was geography to city for this instance, but Snowstone, literally where we're gonna continue off the arc, I had like the Ice Spike Mountain be there, and then I was like, okay, and then there'd be a hole built into this, and then you kind of expand from there. And so geography, yeah, it's like whether there's rivers, whether there's mountains, whether it's, you know, farmland or grasslands and all these different things. And I think the second biggest thing that in terms of how I build out cities is kind of geography. And then also, like, what is that city's purpose? Like, what does that city have that is, like why is a city there, if that makes sense?
Well, let me ask you this. Why is that city there as far as justifying it in the world or justifying it in the story? Because I feel like those are always two very different things for me.
It depends.
They're normally completely different.
I think it depends, and I think there's actually there's a lot of processes, I think, to putting cities into your world, and I think it's interesting because, like, I think we mentioned even in that original episode where we kind of glossed over it, is a lot of times for me, like, I have a general overarching idea of the world, right? I have a lot of cities, I have it filled with certain things, but there's also a lot of blank space that I leave. I haven't like fully fleshed out my world 100% to the point of where it's like every single thing is.
For a minute.
Yeah, no. Every single thing is known. Every single spot is filled. It's like, no. Usually I'll have general ideas of areas, and then as I sit down and either do like intentional world building, I'll start to fill it in, or while a story unravels, I'll kind of build up cities and I'll kind of build things and I'll kind of tailor it in a way. But what I mean
Right.
by like what is the purpose of the city, it can kind of mean different things. Like if it's in the middle of like an arc or a campaign and it kind of makes sense for something to be there, then I'll build it in and then I'll kind of tie it in. But even then, that purpose will still kind of tie to geographical regions. I'm actually a good example of this. Also was in the Frost Trail arc. There was no ice fishing village on the other side of the mountain pass until like 2 or 3 episodes before y'all got there, and I was like, you know what would actually make a lot more sense is if this was a thing. And so then
Yeah, like
go ahead.
Also, I think it worked out great from a story perspective too, because I think you're just like logistically, there's a lake there, like it's a resource, food scarce. Like, why wouldn't they be maximizing this resource? But also, like narratively from the story, it's like you don't just like walk, trees, snow. Welcome to fucking Grand Central Station. Like you made it. It's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
you know, like civilization, like is sudden, but still, you're not like walking to a metropolis. Or like, oh, here's like the first vestiges of like reintegrating to society.
Exactly, on the outskirts
Yeah.
of it, you know, because that's the thing too. Is I was thinking as that was progressing, as we were like going through this like snowscape survival story, this arc that I was running. It's like, well, hold on, yeah, this is pretty like shit. Like the winters here suck. How would these holds maintain resources? How would they get, how would Snowstone isolated on the other side of this pass of these mountains? How would they get in? So that's how I kind of built. I think it was. I want to remember. I'm gonna look it up because I have to look it up because I think it was called. What was it called? It was called something. Yeah. So, but if you want to have any talking points while I find this, for sure. Take it.
One thing I do, because I guess for me, I normally like something kind of had to steer away from, because you could always do something too much, even if it's a good thing.
Yeah.
I normally really try to really prioritize. This city's here. It exists in the world for this reason. It has an economy of this. The main plot is in this city for a reason. Like they're here for a reason. And here's all the groundwork. And quite recently, I said to hell with that a little bit. Like it is not that fucking important. Like in the space campaign, they had probably 10 to 15 sessions in a town called Marcos Deloso. At no point in time did I have to justify the existence of the city on the barren hell planet they lived on. It was a planet with a fancy name, and all they knew was some Puritan people took over the town. It used to have this, it used to have that. Now it's kind of just existing. It just is a town. It's here, and the story is gonna live in it for a little bit. And great. I really like that city, especially since I didn't try to make it. I kind of took a different approach. I'm here's a city, and it's here, and yeah, and as we're kind of going through, I'm describing the planet that they're on and all this stuff. It's oh, it makes sense that they have this. What kind of cool feature will this planet, this town have? I'm oh yeah, it's a massively volcanic planet that had crazy asteroid activity too. Yeah, of course it's on the lip of a colossal crater.
Yeah.
Geothermal activities, all this stuff, and nobody in the town cares about it. It's been there all their lives. They don't give a shit. They're yeah, it's a fuck off crater. What do you want us to do about it? Don't fall in, I guess. But if you think about it, even in all the technology of a sci-fi setting, there's no reason for people to fucking live there. Not even kind of. But they did. They absolutely did. And I think there's a lot of freedom in that. It's there's a town here because I want it to be, and the justification doesn't have to be airtight.
Yeah.
Also, mainly because I don't know if you've driven through the Midwest. There's no reason for half that shit to exist. There is no fucking reason for half those damn towns to exist. They all suck. No shade, but if you live there, move.
Damn. This fan just targeted the whole Midwest in one strike.
Yeah, all 3 of them.
Yeah, all 73 people who live in these towns that you're talking about.
But really those towns even if they had a purpose railroads or Oregon Trail and things like that, a reason to exist, maybe there was a mine in the area, a lot of them don't have those things they were built for originally anymore, and now they just kind of exist because technology is to a point that it doesn't need to justify itself quite that literally. So I think there's no reason you can't just there's a town here, It's a bit beat down. Maybe, you know, there used to be like a trading route through here that people don't really use anymore.
Yeah.
But the town's here still, you know, like there's no reason not to.
Well, what I also love about that too is sometimes, and this is why, like we mentioned constantly on the channel, that a lot of times players will also write the stories, and so it's a lot, or like will build the world with you. When they bring something up, I love the moments of like where like I didn't think of it, and a player's like, oh, like this would make sense to be here, so I'm gonna go look for that, and you're like, yes. Let's go look for that together, because I didn't think of it, but it makes a lot of sense. So that is like, now here.
The physical pain I almost feel of what, like, because I don't really draw maps that often. Like, we have to be in a town for a fucking long time for me to draw a map. Just because, like, you know, I like it to be loose. I really enjoy that because if a character says something and that if there's no reason to give them a hard no, it's going to exist pretty much for me. Mm-hmm. You know, if you want to find a library, it doesn't make sense for one to be here, but there's going to be something because I want to see where you're going with that. You know, I want to, like, let you at least go as far along in this pursuit you're trying to go. And it's just, and then when they start asking about, like, the roads and such, like, just the way that details start coming out of, like, yeah, there's a pathway through here, they have this over here, they got this going on over here. Like, I'm feeling roads being carved into my mind that I, like, literally cannot forget. Like that stupid town, I remember how the roads are laid out this way, that way, they had this park here, they had this hill running over here. Like, I could, like, make the map in my mind, and I hate it a little bit because I really wish it didn't take that much brain power, but it just exists now. Like, it just, yeah.
Hell yeah. I'm also
just, like, the players were like, is there like a cool little sandwich shop that I just feel like a side road gets carved into my brain, and now, yeah, there's one around the corner. My ears are bleeding.
Yeah. The on the spot, like, yes, I got it. You're fitting it in. You're trying to rationalize it because you want to say yes, but also like you have to just like break your brain over it. Also, I'm also laughing because I look over and Eric literally put somehow Palestine returned, and I was like, what the fuck? And then he corrected it to Palpatine, and I was like, oh.
Yeah. That's a little bit better of a.
Yeah, I was like, statement. What the hell? But no, true. Also, real quick, just for my own satisfaction, it was the town of Glacial, and it was where the goodness gracious, I had it. It's where the Fishers Guild, known as the ice reelers, were. Yeah. And that was just like a little thing that I made up, like literally only a little bit before because it made sense, like we kind of discussed.
I don't know if I made this comment as Veerden, but I do like the thought of like a fishing guild on an ice lake being called the Ice Reelers as like a slam that people used to be. It's like, you ain't catching shit out there, you're just reeling ice. Like, give it up, buddy.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Like, hey man, this is a legitimate profession.
Hey, you know, it's multifaceted, man. So whenever they can harvest the ice for their coolers, and they also maybe get fish. I don't know. It's up to interpretation, I guess.
Every once in a while, man. Every once in a while. They find one in the ice.
Yeah. Yeah, they chip it out, and they're like, here you go.
They got one mage that has burning hands and just a hot plate. It's like, yeah,
it's like an assembly line. It's like on conveyor belts, and you just have mages. They're like shitty mages or like sorcerers who just like are super low tier, but they found work in the warehouse and they just melt ice for the fish.
It's a legitimate profession.
Yep, they get paid to do it. I mean, shit, I would do it right now if I could.
Yeah, no, if I could, I'd be doing it, no problem, in a heartbeat.
But what you were mentioning as well, which I now have to remember because I was on a caveat, and then my train exploded. My train come back to me.
A lot of that going on.
Oh, I'm the exact opposite. I love fleshing out cities to almost to a very finite degree before. I wouldn't say before, but I like to. Okay. I wouldn't say I draw, because some people do. They draw out every single aspect of a city, like on like a map or something. I like to do that, but not necessarily like every single building is labeled, every single thing in the city is like marked, but more of like what's the flow to the city. I like to get like a ground plan, because I think if you have like the walls of the city, or at least the perimeter of it, and you kind of start, and you have the roads, and you have that, from there I can flow the city out pretty well, and kind of be like, okay, I can like have different sections of what this would be, and then if someone asks me, I can kind of throw it to a portion of the city where that would make sense, and that's kind of where I go from. And then I like to think of like, it depends on the scale of the city, but I like to think of like a tavern, a general store. I like to have those things kind of on deck, just for like simplicity and ease of stress for me. I'm kind of a meticulous planner when it comes to certain things. I like to have things on deck. That way I can I can kind of almost storytell from a position of almost like power in a sense, you know. It's because I already have things in deck, so when I'm asked these questions, I can go. But also, of course, there's a lot of improv to D&D, so I'm also ready to go if needs be for something off the cuff, like a pastry shop, like you were mentioning.
Well, that also kind of this speaks to just kind of our different, I guess, maybe just creative stylings.
Right.
Because for me, if I did all that prep work, it would stress me out instead of make me feel
Isn't that weird how that works? How,
yeah,
like, people
it would
just
absolutely fucking stress me out. Like, because for me, like, the furthest I'll go is, what's the vibe? Subject to change.
Vibe check.
Yeah, does the city have walls or not? Believe it or not, super important. And that's, like, the only thing I'll stick to. Subject to change, though. And then also like what like landmarks will be visible and and mainly like what does the party like want from it? The town will kind of service that a little bit. Then also what do we want to do to them? Because the town will service it, even geographically. Like I want them to be like at some point. I like the idea of like a really pitched guerrilla like style fight. So I'm gonna have.
Oh, okay. I just immediately Harambe came in my mind.
No, just like in that case, I'm gonna make the vibe of the city like a little bit tighter streets, maybe kind of like a lot of alleyways. Or maybe there is either a lot of traffic or a lot of broken down vehicles and things like that around. Like maybe depending on the prosperity rubble, things like that. And that kind of just speaks kind of against the vibe of the city because I want it when I throw out a combat map, I want it to have been justified and kind of telegraphed. You know, not telling them, hey, as you walk down this square and you see this, that, and the other, you're gonna bleed next to it. But I want to be like when things are happening, I want it to be kind of a known area situation. That like when I put a battle map down, I don't want it to be too much of a disconnect from what I've been describing.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. 100%. I agree with that. And I think it's also good to kind of have those things in mind when it comes to like building out your place. Because if you're like intending combat to be there, kind of having an understanding as to how it is, and then kind of having that. Yeah, having it not be like a surprise of like, oh, we're in a dystopian like wasteland because you've been, compared to what you've been describing or what you thought the vibe was compared to what you pull out.
The sand was chill, not aggressive.
Yeah, dude, exactly. Also, Gray,
we're
welcome
on a
in.
Beach.
Welcome in, Gray.
Oh, how Farmer Gray.
Yeah, he's in here. The homies.
One thing I will say, which I've realized somewhat recently, and I don't know if I need to change it.
Okay.
But sometimes I know it happened in the sci-fi campaign. On that same town, Andrew's character climbed up to a high ridgeline. It's like, I'm a roll a perception check with my telescope. I'm like, okay, you're gonna see a town, like whatever. He got a nat 20, and I'm like, I can't give him nothing. I can't be like, you see bullshit really well. So the town morphed and changed. Like, oh, you kind of like from your vantage point, you notice like this hidden little a clove somewhere off in like it's a sci-fi setting. It's this like hydroponics field out there, and they're all the greenhouses, and they discovered a thing that was never supposed to be part of the encounter, but thank God they discovered that there was two like hidden enemy fighter jets that became a huge part of the story of going and neutralizing before everything popped off.
Yeah.
So like sometimes like when that happens, like if someone does like a more mundane role, that happens with anything, gets an at 20, I very well might be like, this maybe didn't exist before, but now it absolutely does, and either cool, you got this new benefit, or thank God you noticed that was gonna get you, Woo!
But I mean, that's like the big thing, and that's kind of like where like kind of we were talking about with the cities in general. It's just like sometimes like how they're built out and how like the world itself is created is through the storytelling aspect, right? And that's where I feel like keeping world building kind of loose and giving their letting there be flexibility or kind of blank spots in the areas around you really helps with kind of having everything kind of be built out as the story unfolds, as you progress through things, and then it makes it kind of more unique to that story, and it kind of makes it kind of almost blend in with what you're trying to do with that, like with the area or with whatever you're trying to do with the party or whatever the story's going. But it kind of helps that because as DMs you cannot think of literally everything. That's a big thing we mentioned about, I think, with the dungeons. I think we were talking about the dungeons episode was where it's like, dude, when I'm thinking of a city, I think of a lot of the highlights, I think of a lot of the important things, but it's like the little tiny things you don't think about until you're actually in it and you're explaining it. That's how we're talking about dungeons, right? You go into a room and you're like, oh, this room was used for torture. You're not like, I'm not sitting here typing out, bro, every single instrument that's in here. No, it's like you're walking in here. Here's the vibe. Now I'm describing. Oh, hey, yo, hold up. Maybe a torture chamber. But no, but it's like, oh, this kitchen space is this, and then you build it out as you go. I think that's how cities can be, and that's how I think they should be in a little bit too, because what you might have had for, like you said, Drakenhelm or whatever, what you had in your mind, but then the party actually finally gets to it, could adjust that initial idea.
For me, it almost always does. Like, I have a vibe of like, oh, this city, let's just run with a hypothetical city of Drakenheim. I'm like, this is gonna be like an esteemed mountain fortress, like way up, ancient order, but it like turned into like a refugee thing, So like there might be a couple of the knights or hunters or whatever there, but it's like it has a population. That's my main idea. By the time we get there, it's hosting a fucking circus, because
yeah, exactly.
That's the direction the story went. It might you might still see the party might see like the bones of what I described, but like there's new paint over it. Everything's been kind of rearranged and changed. Just because that's just how things go. That's how D&D flows and changes.
100%.
I my idea is like you guys are gonna be in this malicious and like dangerous area, but by the time they get there, that might not be what the party or the story needs.
Yeah.
So like Drakenheim, it maybe has some of those notes as before, but like their experience there's gonna be totally different than that, which is kind of why I try not to telegraph those things unless specifically asked, or like trying to build either like anticipation or most normally with me dread. It's normally the primary emotion I try to elicit from my players.
Yeah, so DM actually means Dread Master for Connor. Everyone else is Dungeon Master, but it's Dread Master for homie.
Yeah, I think most of the people from the last session can agree with that statement.
But they kind of like now shift our focus kind of from building up the city, and kind of where it is and kind of like what, like kind of the vibe. Let's kind of look a little bit more into the walls itself. And I would say for me, when it comes to actually building what the city holds within, I would always like to kind of start out what's like the one big thing that this city has that's kind of unique to it, and kind of blending or bleeding back to what we were mentioning before when I mentioned that like what's its purpose. That I kind of like blend those two a little bit, right? So if I have a farming town, like if is it just a farming town, then I guess that's kind of the vibe, and if it is just like, hey, because obviously there needs to be a bunch of farming towns to support the local kingdoms, etc. But for instance, like one of the it was kind of a shorter story we ran while I was back home in Washington for a bit of time, but it was when you were playing the bard. You guys went to the observatory, and there was like the star in the sky, and we were playing that.
Right.
And then you guys had to go from one city on this highway, this like chain of highway, this chain spread of road, and there's always different city states on this highway, right? And so I was thinking, I'm like, well, each one needs to kind of have a unique kind of thing to the city, or else it gets mundane, or else you're just going city to city to city to city on this highway. And I kind of started thinking about that, and that's kind of how I started kind of almost making my cities from then on. Because like the first place you guys were in, there was an observatory, which is kind of the focus of what it was. And then you guys went to the next city, and that's where like the Hearthfire forging grounds were, where it's like all
there's
these
like the two competing mines.
Yeah, you have these.
I remember that because I was very excited. That was like I still remember that town distinctly because of just how fun. Like, I love that trope. Please continue, but I just love it. It's just like there's two crime families that are morally gray. And
yeah,
I was
exactly.
Like, oh, fuck yeah, baby.
Yeah,
who can we double cross? Let's go.
Yeah,
I can play a morally good character. I'm like, I'm gonna kidnap your daughter and I'm gonna blow up your storeroom, and we're gonna see how I make money. I'm gonna blame it on you. I'm gonna blame it on you.
Hell yeah.
Loot your bodies.
Exactly. I remember being like, yeah, there's mining towns or whatever. You guys had a very other like distinct quest to like go into the mines, and you're like, hold on, before I go, I'm gonna go talk to this other company. I'm like, oh shit. So then I had to like homebrew all this stuff on the fly.
Actually, I think Gray's in the chat, because I think we ended up giving like 2 rings that we could like speak telepathically. I can't remember the spell, and we're just like, I think we also talked them into giving us dynamite as we're going.
Dude, yes, you guys literally were like, yo,
we'll make sure nothing bad happens.
No, because you went, so you had to go to one mine, and then you went to the opposing mine, and we're like, yo, we could like make something happen, and they were like, oh, make it look like an accident. You're like, cool, it'd be a lot cooler if we had dynamite, and you're like, okay, but like don't make it obvious, and you're like, okay. And so I think that's how, because they're sabotaging.
That's absolutely, and then I just remembered, I think the last session we played, we got into heavy melee combat, and then I remembered I was playing a bard. So there was that.
Also, ZS. Why is your name so blurred? 2332. Welcome in. Good to have you in here.
Best viewer on dash dash dash, man. I don't know what that was supposed to mean, but I
best
agree.
viewers on. I don't know.
Feet pics.
I don't know.
Later.
I don't know what.
Feet pics later.
Well, I don't know what Stream Elements is blocking, but I guess they're doing their best. But anyway, so like the Hearthfire Forging Grounds, these mining companies, right? All these different things. Geographically, they're kind of more upward on the highway, closer to the mountain range, and so all these things geographically tied together, and I wanted to make this like kind of unique portion to the city, and so then that's where I built the Hearthfire Forging Grounds, these different things, and that's kind of where almost a starting point as to where I like to build my cities. Apart from kind of having the flow of it, like with roads, walls, kind of the overall shape, then when I start to fill it, that's a big point that I start with. I'm curious as to what you do.
Well, for me, what I feel like mostly I do is, especially the vibe I've been going for lately, is I try really hard and fail every time. Like, I want to make a mundane town, like in the world that whatever it's in a fantasy setting, in a sci-fi setting, in like a steampunk setting. I want this town to be as normal of that type of town as it can be, and I fail every time. Mainly because
yeah, I feel that.
Well, mainly because like I want to make a normal thing, but like if you stick to that and really like hold your ground there, it's going to be that, and it's going to be a little boring. But if I restrict myself to that as I designed it, it ends up being a little bit more logical. Like things start making a little bit of sense. Like it's here. Here's kind of the industry layout. Here's like a guy that runs the town, moral or amoral, whatever it is. Here's maybe somebody competing. Like I get all that kind of stuff going, and then inevitably I'm like, what if there's just a big fuck off, just like goalie in the center of it, man? What if what if there's just like an active fucking volcano? Like, why not? Like, and that normally comes like quite quickly along in the development. It's like, this seems pretty cool. What if lightning strikes at the same place every like, not even on an even basis of time, like every 4.5 hours? Like,
yeah.
Sometimes it's at midnight, next day it's drifted a bit. Like you can't really plan around it. Like, let's just make that happen.
Well, I think that's interesting because I feel like, I mean, you say that, and I would like to say I agree with you. Making like because I feel like outside looking in, sometimes you can view, and even when you wanted to roast the entire Midwest, it's like you view these places as boring or mundane. But I feel like if for people living there and for people who are like occupying that, usually there's something unique that brings them all together. You know, and whether that's a volcano or a lightning strike that happens every 36 minutes on the dot, and it's like old man Jenkins sitting in the rocking chair like it's struck. It's like usually,
too,
you
no
know,
where he goes.
that's normal for them, but then you show up and you're like, what the fuck's up with this lightning? And they're like, oh, what are you talking about? Like, that's just a thing. You know, I feel like
it just happens.
It's like that
like
perspective.
if you time it, if you hold your phone up right, actually it gets a charge.
Yeah, it's 100% and blows up.
But no, I do agree with it, because another thing too is the town shouldn't be weird. At least the normal features of the town should not be weird to the townspeople.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with like, because we're kind of talking about towns right now, and I'm not trying to jump into this point now, that we can revisit it later. We're talking about towns as we're designing them as the static thing of the town. But normally when you're going there to fix a problem, and that problem could either be systemic or it could have been like a thing that's kind of happened more of like an epidemic.
Yeah.
So it could either be like you're going there like, oh, there's crime, it's been here for years, and you're like, I'm here to mess it up or work with it or whatever. And sometimes it's like, this town was very normal, and then just like, yeah, the experiments went wrong, and so like they're like, this was a quiet, sleepy little hamlet till Farmer George fused with all his cows and created the umbral swine. And it was like, let's go deal with that, you know?
Yeah. Bro, Farmer George's the fucking worst. Farmer Graham, on the other hand, is the best.
Yeah. Well, the problem is the umbral swine gets struck by lightning still every 46 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
So he does heal every time.
Yeah, it's just a feral freak of nature that's just like is an issue, but like but only like from the outside looking in. Everyone else is used to him. They're like, oh, that's just
totally fine with it.
Yeah, they're
totally
cool
fine with it. They're very supportive of his transition. But no, I think that. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I think that's actually a really good point too, because I guess I'm talking about from like this one focal thing, but I feel like another big thing is backstory of the city. Like, you know, how did it get to be here? I think that goes in the geography, because you got, like you were even saying, a city could have been here for a reason, and it's no longer that reason, but it's still there. So I think you know, having the backstory of it, and I think this all kind of ties together as to like kind of the starting points of making a city, right? Is
Right.
you know, the geography, how that ties into why it was built, and then how, like, why it was built, how that ties into the history, the traditions that are there, or even current events. Why is it
Right.
now like this? And that could be the big thing, you know, or it could be
Yeah.
something else, like what I was mentioning, like a significant kind of function of the city or whatever.
I can't help but like go back to what is something that's always for me a constant source of inspiration and excitement for any time I do world building, and that is of course the movie Cars. Because if you think about,
What?
because if you think about
Okay,
it,
that let him cook,
the whole
Danico.
point of the movie is Radiator Springs. Like, yeah, we used to have a reason to be here. We were a bustling environment. They built an interstate. Now there's like no reason for this town to be here.
Oh, dude,
And, like,
Cars,
it's, like,
man, the best.
It's as simple as that. I don't get mad at. It's where my mind
No,
goes.
it's good, dude. Cars, man, they're good at world building. Shit.
Well, until you watch the second movie, then they get excellent at world building.
Oh, I haven't seen the second one. They have like
Oh,
4 of them
For
too.
the love of God, go in with the highest expectations.
All right,
I can't. Okay, no, I'll just let you do it, man. It's such a fucking bad movie. I cannot. I gotta tell. It's such a fucking.
I'm
bad
gonna go
movie.
watch all of them after this.
You should. But the only reason I bring that up is like it's the only example of an intentional trope of, in like a focused on note of like this town was important and then just its age has passed. Its reason for being here is kind of passed.
Yeah.
Because like I don't know, they don't get into the economics of cars that much, but it's not like this used to be a mining town. You know, it's just like we existed on this road and we kind of traded with people who traveled around.
Dude,
Like,
it's
that-
funny
it
that you
doesn't have-
mentioned Cars, because there was something I was thinking about the Cars movie, and I was like, if they're all cars, then I was like, why would, and then I forgot what it was. If I remember before the end of stream, I'll mention it, but I was thinking like,
Don't go down this rabbit hole.
dude, I'm about to. If I remember it, we're about to, but anyway.
The biggest thing I remember seeing is and I believe it's in Cars 2, there's a shot of like the Pope as the Pope Mobile. And the Pope Mobile was only made because one of the popes was assassinated. So in the Cars universe, the Pope was assassinated because that's the only reason the Pope Mobile would exist. And then he just also became the Pope Mobile. So there's a whole lot going on. I don't know how the Industrial Revolution worked out either. But
Yeah.
anyways,
Cars is a lot of, I feel like, just homebrewing as you go. Like, nothing makes fucking sense, and then you just build it, and it makes sense
Well,
as you go.
okay, to pull out of the existential loop I was about to go through, it doesn't need to make sense to a degree. The Cars universe does not demand explanation for how cars reproduce, or how they get fuel, or is Planes a tie-in? I don't know. Never watched it. It's also, I just keep seeing one scene on the internet of like them doing a horrible bombing run into like an aircraft carrier and everyone dies. It's like this is a Pixar movie.
What the fuck is Cars on?
Anyway, the point is,
Okay.
Cars does not demand like at least in the sense of the movie, because I absolutely do demand, but like it doesn't, like the cars exist, they're cars, so that's fine, and the road was there and now it's not, and it's kind of sad. And like you don't need to be like the cars need this to subsist, so there was this rare resource that was mined here and now it's kind of gone, and now like the economy of the land shifted this way, and that, and like these people are kind of remnants left behind, and my god, they've been accosted from society, matter of fact. Like, or the road just fucking moved.
Yeah, right.
Like it could just be that, you
A
know, like,
simple thing that now has led
Yeah.
them to here. I see what you're saying, yeah.
yeah, because it normally, like in real life, which does not have to be a source of inspiration, mundane things happen that affect people on large scales.
Yeah.
Like oh, we're gonna make this road more efficient, and that will inadvertently affect a couple thousand people. Just maybe a lot, make tens of hundreds of thousands of people's lives technically better too, but like it will still affect other people negatively.
Yeah.
Just things like that, or just be like a natural disaster happened, or it could be like you know, if you go the resource route, resources went out. It could, especially for a D&D campaign, it could just be like the gnolls weren't really a problem 100 years ago, and now they absolutely are, and this town just like kind of stuck on that what has become a frontier. Like it just isn't safe,
Yeah.
because then a D&D party goes in and gets to make it less safe.
Yeah, then your band of hooligans gets to go and like
Yeah.
burn taverns to the ground in the sake of helping.
It's just like, I don't know how much mead you have, but it's about to be because.
But I think that's a good point though, because building cities out, if every single one is just drastically unique thing and this like crazy backstory filled thing, and it's like everything is always going on, then I do think that in a way you can kind of numb your party member or your players and just kind of the world to kind of like to just like I would say almost like uniqueness or like this exoticness, you know? I think you do need, I think you can make cities and make these hubs of like, you know, populaces. You can make them unique without having to go super grandiose, super crazy. I like what you're saying in terms of just like, hey, it can be a simple thing and that's the unique thing to them, but it's not like, you know, Leroy or Grandpa Jenkins with his 17 cow udders on his forehead because he translocated his brain into like a fucking cockroach 7 years ago. And that, you know, we don't have to go down that hole. It could literally just be something.
We must a little bit. Because that sounds like the most amazing ranger. With the cockroach companion?
Oh, yeah.
Udderhead?
Oh, yeah. Udderhead.
I haven't played the DLC, but that might be an Elden Ring.
Yo, Curse of the Udderhead. It'd be a badass boss. Yeah.
Yeah, especially there's a cockroach that you know has 1,000 like HP and it's like that big. Go ahead and try to hit him.
Well, better yet, the cockroach is controlling the udder-headed human.
Anyway. That threw me through a loop, especially when Bobby Cadwell immediately started singing.
Okay,
Life
so
is beautiful.
Okay, so we kind of hit all the the backstory stuff, kind of the broad strokes here when it comes to building a city. Unless you have anything else that you want to kind of tie into there. Kind of want to.
No, I mean not really with that. Like the geography of things. The only other thing I'd say is a trope I really like. It kind of I don't lean on enough, but almost every time I make a town, there's always gonna be like a town square or like
yes, yeah,
like maybe a garden or something kind of central to the town because just for me, just as far as utilitarian. It's a very easy thing for me to kind of start the vibe and kind of grow from.
Yeah.
Like, well, even if, like, you know, things change from that. I do like, oh, maybe there's a fountain. As remarkable as it might be, there's a fountain. That already can say a lot about a town. Like, depending on where you're at. You know, and then, like, just the town kind of radiates from there. I feel like it's just a more natural, like, in my mind, it's a more aesthetically pleasing way for a town to go.
Well, actually, that kind of ties into what I was going to kind of bring into next. I would say is kind of like, what do you do to fill the city? I know in like a way you kind of go pretty loose with it. I know you're not like soup. You don't like kind of flesh out a bunch of stuff. But like when you start to actually build it out, when you start to think about it, when the players are in there, what do you do? Kind of like how do you go about like filling it with certain things? I'm sure there's plenty of things that your players kind of have a hand in filling because they ask you and you kind of build it in. But what are some like core things that you add to a city and you think about when it comes to kind of when it building it, the actual internals and how it functions?
It's kind of like the three main things that come to my head are I want to communicate for one, what is the industrial or market vibe? You know, like, this is an environment where, like, there's a lot of, like, heavy mining going on. So you're going to see a lot of people in, like, their, like, workwear and such moving around. Like, because of that, there's more of a tavern scene going on. Or perhaps this is, like, trade. This is, like, maybe artistic district. So you're going to see, like, more leisure going on. You're going to see people in, like, nicer clothes. You're going to see people maybe not being as busy and just try to communicate that vibe. Secondly, I do want to always communicate, with that, I'd want to communicate a little bit of, like, whatever the governing body is, because normally
political structures is what I was the point we're gonna bring up. Yeah,
but because there's you could be like there's a king and like got it, or you could be like there's a king because you're seeing these banners, you're seeing a bunch of knights, you're seeing knights. Maybe every other place you've been to, it's been like a mishmash of guards, and like now you're seeing very uniformed soldiers at regimented posts and all this stuff. You're like watching tax collectors go door to door and stuff. Like you're seeing a more efficient bureaucracy going on. And the most important thing I'll try to do, which might tie into any of the other two things, is I will drop hints and at least like show you the shadows of the hand of whatever the main antagonist is doing in this area. Whatever the problem you are going there to solve, I want you to see at least like somewhat evidence of it. Okay. So if it's like maybe there's a crime spree happening, you might not see someone like pickpocketing somebody, you might not see a stabbing, but you'll see like a business owner like complaining about like something that just happened, or you might like hear about a thing, or if maybe someone gets a really good check, they do directly see that.
Yeah.
Or if there is say there's like a necromancer in the area, maybe you're like going by and people are talking about like just whispering about the issues going on, like they talk about the cemetery being like gated up. There's more like religious people moving around, like maybe with incense and things like that. Just trying to like placate the problem as best they can.
Yeah.
Just like whatever, like just on the nose, immediate, like, hey, the problem you are going to be dealing with, whether they know about it or not. exists, and it exists in the world in a way that affects the people around.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a good way. One thing you mentioned, I'll usually do kind of like a vibe, and kind of give like an atmospheric kind of vibe when in terms of like describing the people around. But I do like how you mentioned like clothing and kind of the personal effects of what these people are wearing. Because I'll usually I think I more lean towards like emotional, like, oh, it's like a happy, you see people like, that's like the vibe that like I immediately go for. But I kind of like the idea of like, of the actual kind of physical appearance of people, of the town, of what's kind of like what's going on, because that can reflect a lot as to what is, how the city operates, what's happening underneath, like behind the closed doors and whatnot. So I do like that. I didn't even really necessarily think about it like that, in terms of like describing those things. So that's cool. But one big thing I kind of like what you were saying was just kind of giving underhanded things as to like what this might be going on. And actually I ran like a home session with a couple of my roommates, and the whole preface was in this kind of marsh town, like an actual town. It was not very large. It was a marsh town. Basically the mayor of this town had become a recluse, was no longer a relevant or prevalent person in charge, and so the guards had then taken over and started abusing the locals, and so now it kind of caused this tension. Classic. And so there was just like it's just cool. It's cool that you mentioned that, and kind of like I think it's a good like thing to remember when it comes to building out the cities as well. It's kind of setting like the vibe and setting the tone for these areas, so that way your players are kind of having an understanding going in, and it lets them RP a little bit more realistically and a little bit more understanding. Because it's like, if you're in your mind, you're like, everyone's glum, everyone's pissed off, everyone's blah blah blah, but you don't necessarily tell them that until maybe they make a perception check, or you don't tell them that until maybe like a little while in, and they're just acting like dumbasses, or they're like acting like a fool, or they're like uppity, not realizing that. Then it can kind of take away, and they'd be like, oh well, now I feel like shit because I didn't really know this thing, and I was RPing like a douche. When that would not have been my intention had I seen the vibe, or had I understood that.
I think I think it, to a degree, like you mentioned, like, oh, you bring up emotions, you don't bring up the things necessarily that I bring up. I almost feel like, as you're saying, like the emotions, like, shit, how could I forget? Because I think the emotions play so much in like the aesthetics of the clothing and all that. But like if we go to different cities, like we all like people dress slightly differently and there's different things going on. But like the vibe of cities is quite different in the US. Like if Seattle and Portland are pretty fucking close. But if you travel like like other places, if you go to like Cincinnati, if you go to Chicago, if you go to Denver, all those they're gonna have a very different vibe. And a lot of that is attitude, a lot of that is just like how the people carry themselves and all those things. So I think, like, as you're saying it, like, yeah, there might be a reason where you kind of like wait till they could like converse with somebody, maybe that's when they notice. Yeah. Right? But like also you can be like, yeah, you get like a fucking hostile vibe right now. And not like they're gonna fight you hostile, just that they're judging you style. And just go, oh god, we are in Portland. And
we did it! We made it! How did we do that? We were really intentionally not trying to make it. We were trying to circumvent.
We drove north!
Yeah, the sign said this way, now we're here, shit. Also, Game Master's Vault, thank you so much for the follow. Appreciate that. Appreciate you.
Are we in his vault now?
I don't know.
Did we get vaulted?
Have we been? Maybe. I think we might have been. I think we might have been.
Look, as long as he vaulted like a hammock too, I'm kind of chill with it. Like that's.
Yeah, hammock and a wine bottle, and I think you got Connor. Connor's set. I know what you like.
I have two demands.
But I think, like even like going back to what I was mentioning with like the marsh town, it's like immediately upon entering into like I believe there was like guards like abusing somebody, like extorting somebody for like coin or whatever, and that could immediately kind of give you an understanding of like what's happening, what's going on. And they kind of one of the players knew kind of why they were going to this town, but immediately set the tone and immediately set the vibe of like, oh shit, okay, now we have to, and like the guards were super abrasive and assholes to them at the gate, and so it kind of lets you set up, and it kind of gives your players a very realistic understanding of how they should act. Because obviously it's like when you go to grandma's house, right? You're in your best behavior. Yeah, if you're going to this place that it
No, you're right.
I was like, you better be on the
throw an eyebrow.
You better be on the best behavior for grandmama. No way. But yeah, it's things like that, and that's super important, I think, when it comes to as a DM. Like, what are you going to try to convey with this city immediately once players are at the gates and then entering in, or however they come upon this place.
No, absolutely. I think like especially to establish like the vibe and like a little bit of stakes. Like, there's nothing really better than kind of annoying your party. Like, somebody could be like, I'm gonna stab you, and the party like, oh, dude, I love this guy because I get to kill him. Like, that's like you're giving them a present. Like, I mean, like when you're actually just like someone just like, hey, you look poor. Like, I don't know if you can afford to be in here. Like, also like whatever religion you're a part of is probably wrong. And then like the guy like. Just someone just being a like pretty much Nazim from Whiterun and Skyrim.
Oh,
if he just like acts like that, there's
worst.
a reason to play. Like, I think the dude has like 5 lines in the whole game, and everybody like kind of universally either kills him or beats the shit out of him. Like everybody hates him. Just like make a guy like kind of that annoying, who's on the wrong side. And the players like they have a reason to stay in the town now. They're like, we were just traveling through. We didn't know we needed to stay, but I'm gonna kill that guy in the dead of night. Like, the rogue's gonna find out what room he's in before he like goes to bed. I'll tell you that.
Hell yeah.
But no, especially like the guards giving people a bit of beat, like like a social interaction of some kind, something they can observe happening on their way in. They kind of let them know, like, hey, this is kind of like the tone of what's happening.
Yeah.
Because the dungeon master has complete and total control of the world. This, like, to a degree, the story, the vibe, and all of that. But the dungeon master is inevitably one person at a table of typically 5 to 7, depending on what kind of parties you're running. So, like, when you do what you can to be, like, with your amount of time to set the tone, because if you don't set the tone, there's going to be that one player who's just like, all right, where's the nearest guy? Is he isolated? I'm going to show strumming. Can I do that?
Bro, you cut out
I got that 20.
You cut out the entire time you said that, so it just seemed like you got redacted on whatever that was. You said, can I? And then it just started...
That is weirdly fortunate. I'm more of just talking about... well, I now have to say exactly what I said, or else...
yeah.
No, it's just like the rogue player will be like, oh, is there a guy alone? Can anyone say, I'm gonna shove a ukulele up his ass. Can I start playing? Can I just start playing?
That's kind of what I expected that to be going.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, they cut out at a pretty opportune time, and I was not gonna let it win.
That's hilarious. No, yeah, can't let it win.
Because that sets the vibe immediately. Because now as a whole, the police have to respond. The environment has to completely respond to them, and they're like, "Why are these guys being dicks?" It's like, well, they are dicks. Like, you guys also did something stupid, but now you have to take a while to establish the vibe of the town because the players took initiative before the town could like set a tone.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and you almost have to kind of like almost catch back up a little bit to kind of reinstate what it is that is yeah, because they kind of provoked it, and now you have to be like, well, actually this, yeah, and then you have to kind of do this like thing. So
actually it's not legal to do that.
Well,
what do you mean?
I would just like to say shout out to all the NPC guards. They either get, aggressively fucking verbally abused or actually assaulted or killed, kidnapped, pickpocketed. All the NPC guards out there who just try to hold it down in the cities. Shout out to y'all, because holy shit, these players be running.
I think in most games I run, NPC guards are like, at least in some degree, the bad guys.
Yeah, I was also gonna say though too, like, that is kind of like almost a little bit of a trope. I feel like in D&D is the guards kind of being pricks. Yeah. And I feel like that's a pretty easy default because I feel like, they're kind of the police in a way, so they probably see all sorts of kind of bullshit all the time, so I can understand why there's disgruntled. But I would just like to say, if you can kind of give a little bit of different kind of life to your guards in a town, or give them a little bit more different personalities, that can also go a long way, I feel like, when it comes to like kind of building out the a city, especially in tying it to the political structure of the place too. If maybe if you have disgruntled guards, it can kind of almost give a glimpse into what maybe how the city's ran. Or if you have guards that are like caring and actually are like public servants, etc. You can do you can have it tie in different ways to kind of reveal things as well.
Absolutely. Like there's, and as they're saying, they're like the attitude of the guards can absolutely reflect what's going on. And sometimes it's a lot of fun to just like play an absolute, just ham it up as the DM. Like, I want this guy to be like over militarist. I want to be like over like Ruth's follower. I want to be like the annoying kid, but now he has a gun. Like, I want to be like,
hell yeah.
I want to be that guy. It's like, actually, your laces aren't quite like. This is a double knot town.
Yeah, this is double.
Like, and it's like, yeah, I'll tie him. And it's like, you're gonna tie him now. And it's like, oh, I'm gonna smack this guy across the head with a smite. Like, just, and it's like, just, and then, like, but like that becomes like the standard of the town. Like, it communicate, like, you know, this guy was given free reign to do that. Or there's a guard who's like, doesn't even, like, check you guys on the way in. And sometimes the party can go, oh, that's cool. Like, oh, we gotta sneak in. I had, like, hidden items. But also gonna be like, oh, the guards don't really care here. And that could allude to, like, a little bit more going.
Yeah, I agree. And I think sometimes it's just fun just to be a prick as a guard, because I feel like that's what pisses off a party. Players the fastest, bro. I feel like is like, you can have like NPCs that are dicks, like douchebags and like, you know, kind of like assholes, but having a guard, because I feel like you kind of almost do like this thing to the players where you're like, yeah, this guy's an asshole, but if you like kick his ass, then like you have a billion more problems because there's a lot more guards, and there's a prison system, and there's like, you know, override. So I feel like that's always a little bit of like a I'm not touching you moment. It's like, and you're like, yeah.
God, when you describe it like that, I feel so bad for doing it.
Yeah, it's good
but
stuff.
You're
though.
not. Yeah, but there's a reason to do it. It's funny.
Well, I think guards.
Also,
oh, sorry, no,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead.
All I was gonna say is, no, guards, I feel like they do. I feel like as DMs, for one, we do it because you know it's fun to have that character, and two, having a character be a dick to the party is a fun thing. It's like the players will like be frustrated by it to a point, but if you're not doing it to an egregious degree, it is a fun experience.
Yeah.
And the guard, as you're saying, is kind of one of the few safe people to do that.
Yeah.
Typically, like as long as the players aren't like, how many other guards are around?
Yeah. Then
if you're not able to immediately justify every one of them, they're breathing down your neck right now, just saying, "I fucking dare you." like, it's just like he's kind of in a back alley, like, you know.
That's.
I've done that before though. I've baited people a little bit, like baited the parties, like, if you want to kill him, there's not a lot of witnesses. Knowing full well that people would still notice a dead, missing man.
Yeah. Where's Jimbo off the roster that didn't come back and be relieved from shift? Oh yeah, we have an issue now.
And who are those 4 strangers covered in blood?
Exactly.
With his sword. It was a better sword, so they're carrying it.
Oh yeah, that's the best thing. Skyrim looting, dude. Just strip him butt naked and wear the guard's armor and be like. It was better armor though.
Yeah, it fits.
One last thing on guards, though. I will say, guards, especially if you're having a tyrannical party and you're trying to figure out, as a DM, trying to figure out kind of how to get your party. I feel like in a little more serious tone, because I feel like, you know, newer players tend to do this more often than not. Just kind of run rampant, you know, if they're especially new to RPGs and they're just like trying to murder hobo, stab the shit out of people, or abuse, you know, the ability that they have. You know, they're in this world, they can do whatever they want, etc. Guards are a very good way to kind of reel them in. Having guards be the consequences of their actions when they're like eventually, you know, a day later, they're like, oh, that's weird. These new people came into town and 14 of our guards are dead. And you have 3 of their weapons and their like precious beloved wife's locket in your pocket. Yeah, now we have some issues. You know, that's where you can use guards, and then that's where you can kind of reel them and be like, hey, you don't be an asshole all the time. Like you got like you know, there's a give and take here in storytelling, and you know, so.
One thing I will say, the only danger to that, only because I have seen it happen.
Oh.
Is they'll be like, hey, you attacked the guards, and now the guards are on you. They're just like, all right, thug life. We're taking over this bitch, for one. Like, for one, we're doing that. Also, where's the nearest criminal, like, mastermind? Because we're going to kill him and we're just going to start a criminal enterprise now. This is our town. Like the party fully embraces that. They're just like, oh yeah, we'll be the bad guys for sure. Is it profitable? Well, do we get to kill people? Okay, yeah, we'll do that.
D&D. Hey, sometimes you just got.
It's D&D.
Hey, D&D.
The only reason that could be a fun campaign, but as the DM, just be aware, like, if you're going to kind of like, if you are going to kind of bluff a little bit, do be prepared to follow through on certain things. If you're going to send people after the party. Like, send them after the party. It's still a game, so let them have fun with it. But be aware you might be signing yourself up for the glorious heroes of the Vishnar Inquisition have, they killed Vishnar for one. Which is not a good start.
They killed the man himself. Yeah, I think that, I mean, that's also, we do like to emphasize also, like, Session 0, laying it out, kind of having some ground rules, too. You know, that's always a good thing as well. Because, I mean, I will say, it can be also frustrating as players if you have a DM that kind of almost abuses the guards a little bit to a point of like you can't even have like a little bit of fun. Like you're like, I want to pickpocket this dude. Guards immediately, and you're arrested, and it's like there wasn't even like any role playing. It was immediately just an issue, and you're like, like you just gotta be careful.
You reach for a pocket, fail a skill check, teleport to prison. Like,
yeah, yeah. I mean, you're like, shit. Yeah. No. 100%. Okay, so shifting off kind of the vibes of the city, and I like kind of where you brought that direction. I kind of want to also kind of now talk about stores, like shops, notable locations or buildings in a city. How do you kind of go about doing that? And like kind of what do you fill it with? I think I'll jump in real quick kind of with this. Yeah. One big thing, and I kind of mentioned it briefly earlier, one thing I like to do is depending on the size of the city, I will literally just like vibe and name of like 2 or 3 taverns, 2 or 3 inns, 2 general stores. Like I'll literally go down a list and I'll have all these things kind of pre-written out, and then I'll place them like either during the game or maybe a little bit preemptively, or just kind of depending on how I'm feeling with it. But that's kind of what I'll do is an alchemy store. You know, a lot of the like kind of like normal things that are in cities, I'll actually just like kind of mark those down, have them all kind of already pre-written, and then scatter them throughout, and then from there kind of start building. So how do you do it?
Man, if I get names, it's pretty cool. What I normally do, because for me, like, I've like especially in the game I run, which is a sci-fi campaign, and if you go to the book that's in it, the Star Wars 5e book, and we use the expanded content, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like I plan like, hey, I'm letting you know like 2 sessions ahead of time. There's going to be shopping available, like proper shopping customization. We're gonna do that whole thing. Please pre-plan it, like because shopping and customizing and getting all this gear is just a whole lot of math and spending and all that. So when it comes to those sessions, like it's like it's RP just completely in a store and environment, and then like a workshop and a forge and all these things. When I go into towns though, which may or may not have those resources, but typically they won't. Typically they're going to another place to upgrade that's a little bit more specific. There's gonna be like a general store. There's gonna be like an armory of some kind that will have ties into some of the more martial factions or criminal factions. There's gonna be like a general store, but even with the general store, like unless the players insist on RPing it, I'm just gonna be like, what do you want to buy? Let's just do that, because for me, it's a thing that I've been told several times, is sometimes it feels like when we play D&D in my worlds, they go in real time. Because 3 hours of my session is 3 hours in the real world. Which is not a bad thing, but like those are small ways I try to expedite it. Yeah. What I will say is taverns are, I would argue, almost as vital as a dungeon to Dungeons and Dragons. Yep. It just is an in-depth thing. Neither one are necessarily required, but you're gonna be doing some catch-up if you're not including them. You're gonna need to be doing some supplements.
That's like a first thing, yeah. There's like first thing players are gonna find or go to. I would say to build off that 100%. I feel like it's in like somewhere to stay and somewhere to socialize are the big things. So I agree with you on that.
Absolutely. Love them. They're always fun. The taverns are fun RP moments, all that. I do agree. Multiple inns, even if it's a small town, there's gonna be 2 at least. You know, because I do like the idea of here's the rundown one, here's the snooty one. Whichever, and then wherever else on the dichotomy of good, evil, business, like all that stuff, like it can go all over the place. I also will make sure there is at least one business that in my mind is completely fucking useless to the party. Because I would like to be surprised. There's almost always one business there that's like, yeah, this is a soda shop. What do they sell? Like 500 flavors of soda? Like, yeah, that's what they have. Like, if you want to do something with that, you fucking tell me. But it's there for you. And it's like, what's this one? This is just like a staples, just in like a sci-fi world, you know?
Yeah, they have horses.
Like
real horses.
Yeah, or in a fantasy setting, it's like, oh, what do they do? It's like, oh, they do rugs and upholstery.
Hell yeah.
It's like, well, how do I use that? It's like, well, if you have a house, you might want to have like rugs.
Yeah, it's like
a banner, like.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like, but like I will have it there for one, because like it flavors the world, and 2, because I would love to be surprised. Like, I fully invite the players to go like, yeah, I have no use really of like messing with the rugs or anything, but like, we're gonna kill a guy. Why not just go classic mobster and roll the some bitch?
Yo, roll his course,
put him in the boot, you know? Like, why don't we
blunt, dude? Or a cigar.
Please don't smoke a human body, players. I have
Roast
yet
his
to see
ass.
that, and I don't want to start. But no, I want to encourage that, and also I do feel like just adding that little bit of stuff adds to the world. There's almost always a random ass store. I feel like in D&D, it's a fun trope to have like a psychic that also ties into like an alchemy store or something like that. And I fully borrow that vibe pretty often from just like crystal ladies, like old women that like believe Topaz keeps out bad vibes.
Oh yeah,
because in
Topaz.
D&D it might actually be true.
True, magical worlds.
Yeah, so but also just like have them have the exact same attitude. So it's a little bit of fun. They won't stop talking about the moon for one. Yeah, they're gonna use moss in most of their potions.
Yeah.
Like just like have things like that around where it's just like it makes sense, like, you know, it's like kind of just go to the basic services the town needs and make them stores if it makes sense.
Yeah, and that's a big thing too, is like big things. I like to like name drop things that are almost like always kind of crucial. Like I'll usually name the inns and the taverns because those are usually always memorable. I'll even, you know, sometimes the general stores I'll name. If it's a unique store, I'll name it. But yeah, if it's like, I mean, most like usually if someone's like, yo, I need to go to a smokehouse, or I want to go to like a meadery, or like I want to go like to get like rations or something, you know, this like specific things like that. I'll just be like, all right, cool, and then I'll just like RP that on the spot, not really even name it. I'll just be like, you find it, cool. Oh, you want to buy some leather? What? There's like a leather worker, a Fletcher. It's those kinds of things, like kind of like what you're saying, where it's like, yeah, there's just certain buildings that like you're aware of, but you don't really take the time necessarily to intentionally embed or in place or name or flesh out, because you're like, okay, if they ask, they go. If not, then not a big deal. Like, you know, it's there, kind of.
Absolutely, yeah.
And one thing though too, I feel like since we're talking about businesses, is memorable storekeepers, barkeeps, stuff like that. What do you how do you build them out? What are your kind of the thoughts in terms of like doing that? Do you like just go off the cuff and you're like, I'm just all right, they showed up and now this is who it is? Like, what do you?
They're always I always try to do a distinct personality, especially if they might never see them again. Like if they're traveling through a town, it's like, I want to go and interact with a person. They want to go to a store. It's going to be a minute or two with them.
Yeah.
Like, say if they're going to do any of the sessions where they're buying, like, fully upgrading their gear. Like, there's one or two guys that, like, I in the thing, like, because they're, like, in what was essentially to them, like, a chain store. Like, a lot of customers. Just basic sales reps. And there's just like, one guy, if I recall, he was helping Evan's character, which was Professor Spliff. Who was just way too, just like it's like somebody trying to sell you a car. It is just like all the upgrade packages. It is like, you flick this little sucker right here, load it in like this, boom! Like, makes the sound effect instead of just like pulling. Doesn't even pull a trigger. It's like, yeah, can't pull the trigger legally. It's like, but here you go. And just like I just like having just, because a session absolutely does not require him. So to me, it must have him. Like, I must have somebody who just is way too much, or somebody who's like arguing with you. I find like that's a fun trope, because or a fun character to have. Keep saying trope when I do mean character, because this is just a person just like, you're going there and you're not talking to the business owner, you're not talking to their kid, you're not talking to the nephew, you're talking to a hired help who's paid too little to care. And especially if the party's just typically, it's like, I need this and I need this and I need a discount. It's like, fuck you, no, like, get out of here.
Oh yeah, the best
like,
is
I'm not helping you. Just get the fuck out of here. Like. Yeah. I don't even do shit. I'm on break, matter of fact.
Yeah, I'm eating my sandwich.
Yeah. It is like that, and then another one I really try to do is somebody who's just which I think is a good one, is just somebody who's way too serious in their craft. Like having an artisan, especially if you're going to like somebody who is forging something, which typically players. I want to make a sword is something I've heard plenty of times, and so when they do that, I always feel like they have somebody who like treats it like an almost like respectful artistic way is a good thing to throw in there.
Yeah.
Mainly because in that case, a bombastic, larger-than-life character can be good and fun, but I don't want the players to have a like in-game reason, even if they know they're gonna get like a +1 sword that does this and does that. I don't want their character to get a vibe of, yeah, this is made by a fucking lunatic, and I just kind of got this weird vibe. Unless you're fine with that. Like, that could be fun, but I want the players like, oh, you have confidence in a thing you invested in.
Yeah.
Like, in-game, out-of-game,
fair.
like, your character and you both agree that this is a good thing. Because if you start rolling nothing but 7s on it, like, there's going to be part of you that just goes, I didn't trust him. I didn't trust his...
Yeah, I knew this dude was a shade. Yeah, shady as fuck. No, I think those are all good points. And I do like the fact that kind of what you mentioned earlier in terms of kind of expediting interactions in stores. Sometimes I think that if you want to, as a DM, want to introduce like a quirky individual or someone that might take a lot of effort to roleplay, but it's something you want to do or it's fun, for sure. Definitely, I would say lean into that. But I feel like also, like, as players and even as a DM, understand, like, you don't always have to do that. You don't have to make a super crazy character and then have to RP him every time, unless like maybe like he's an NPC that becomes like invested in the party or vice versa. Maybe like the party has interactions. But sometimes you can make stores literally, hey, I go in, I look for 12 crossbow bolts, some ball bearings, a piton, shovel, and then I'm gonna go check out. I'm gonna leave. Like, you don't have to sit there and RP 35 minutes for every store. I generally like to RP like almost every store when people are first coming into cities, because I feel like that really gives the city some life. It makes it feel like oh, this is new and we're experiencing the city for the first time, etc., etc. Yeah. Whereas if you've been there, this is the third or fourth time you're back there, you don't have to do that as much. Go ahead.
Right. If they're returning to the town, like there's something going to be for absolutely. Also, because something that just kind of like came to my mind is, like say it's the third time the player's going, they're like, oh, I need to buy rope, I need to buy some rations, like I might as well get like a med pack or whatever, want to make sure I have bandages on me. And then it's like, oh, I want to go do the interaction, and then like as a DM, you have absolute freedom to be like, yeah, absolutely do that. But as you're checking out like Togvir, just kind of lean over to you and inquires about you kind of like add a little bit of either like you're just doing it for RP reasons, or you're adding like you have fully invited like add a rumor or another thread to kind of push the party further. Because as a shopkeeper, as we all know, especially taverns, if they're going to that business, they hear a lot, they talk a lot. It's a very good way to like give the party information.
Yeah.
Especially on the level of rumors.
Exactly. And using these stores and these businesses, and even just using these stores and businesses to also propel what is going on in the area. Because I know when I was mentioning the, I think it was called Fremont was this city with the Hearthfire forging grounds and where you guys were going and to investigate. The whole reason why you guys went there was to get materials for the observatory, but the person didn't have anything in store because of the mines having issues. And it's like that's how you can also lead people, right? You can have the stores be a direct influence over the story, because they'll be like actively like they'll tell them things, they'll explain certain things, maybe they can they'll bitch about it, whatever it is, right? Depending on the initial interactions and kind of the relationship that you can develop, especially for taverns, like you're saying. You have people in taverns or routine customers they see, all these different things you can use to kind of propel the story. And then one other thing for me is I generally, if I'm gonna make a unique store, I'll usually make a unique person behind it. I just love to do that. I love to kind of double down in that area. And I think that's where you can really make memorable NPCs. I would say kind of almost in surplus. And that's where you can kind of test out as a DM kind of your RP skills and kind of like different things that work and kind of get a feel for how, certain NPCs would work with the party. I just think like introing cities, holy shit. I should have prefaced this at the beginning. As a DM, building cities can be a lot of work depending on the depth you go to.
I don't feel like anything we said here should allude to the fact it's an easy
No, 100%. I'm also going to come out right and say it. It can be a lot of work, and cities, they can be almost kind of daunting. But I will say, just like it can be also very rewarding, and I mean also don't take it too seriously as well.
One thing I will say, because it's kind of something I'm doing right now, my party's in a massive goddamn city. One thing that's helping me a lot is you're in the city, it's so fucking huge, there's all these things, and then you're gonna go here and explore a little bit here, and go here, explore a little bit here, you're gonna go here, explore a little bit here, and you're free to move around between it. But like, if you can break up the city into chunks, there's districts, right? There's a market district, residential district, the King's district, whatever, and like those themselves, like, don't use it in a way to give yourself more work, but like do it in a way that they're gonna have different vibes, and they're gonna be a little bit more perhaps approachable to like this section and then this section and this section. They could be as distinct or as different as you want, but like where all those three kind of fuse together and blend is where the kind of like the melting pot of the city will kind of like flow and come from.
Actually, I love that you mentioned that, because I feel like a lot of times in cities, like I would say very rarely do players necessarily want to go and down every nook and cranny, and also like as DMs you don't necessarily have every nook and cranny have something viable. Like you were mentioning, there's hot spots. And you don't always have to be like describing every single time the city and every single fine detail. You can only be like, hey, and maybe as you're walking, you see a couple people, now you're here. Or you can literally just be like, hey, you're not, it takes you 30 minutes to get there. You're heading there. Okay, what are you doing? And then you talk to somebody else while they're interacting. Okay, now back to you. You've arrived. You don't have to constantly be just describing everything in crazy detail. I think you should, kind of highlight the things that you want the city to be like, remembered by or highlighted by, and then go for kind of from there. Obviously, be ready. And I think that's where kind of what you're mentioning with the vibes. If you have an understanding and a vibe of the city, you can pretty much improv and flow pretty well from that point anywhere you want to go.
Yeah, like if you're in an artistic kind of like trade district, affluent city, and you hear like loud music playing, you're gonna go over and find a garden party with everyone's like barefoot in the grass, just going like, "Oh, great joke, Samuel." Then if you're in a market town, you hear loud music and go over, people are like, "Get him!" It's like, get him with the brick. I got a brick. Like it's like just like different things happening in the city. Just for one, I encourage you to like, especially like because it happens all the time. The party will draw a blank sometimes. Sometimes especially when you're in this new town, there's all this stuff going on.
Yeah.
Even if they have a direct objective with what they know they're coming here to meet with the High King's court. They're coming to town to do that. They know they should probably get a room for the night. They have objectives. Sometimes they'll go there and the party will be quiet, like because you kind of outline a thing, and then like wait for a minute. Then like be fully prepared to have a fucking random encounter. You don't have to roll dice, but like. Just somebody go by, you describe a scene happening in front of them, they hear something, it could be silly, it could be crazy, it could be violent, it could be like sweet, whatever it is to like use that to either reinforce your town a little bit further, or like just like to get the like fucking get moving. Especially like what tends to happen is like you will arrive at the town, session ends. Next session starts, you're at the town, so there's like no momentum prior, like just like in the day. Like this kinda got there. So it kind of jumpstarts the session a little bit too.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing is having kind of, and I've done this before, not every time, but I even have like, I'll make like 4 to 5 side quest encounters. Like I'll write out a couple ideas, like maybe I'm just like literally brainstorming in the shower or something. And I'm like, oh, I don't know, write a couple ideas down, and then I'm like, oh, I can just I can throw them in. I'll just be like, oh, you're at the tavern, let me use this one right here, or hey, like this is happening, let me throw this one right here to kind of, to make it more of like a living, breathing, populated place. Having that prep work, I will say, like, you don't have to go crazy. You don't have to just flesh out all this crazy shit. I think I probably do a lot more prep and note-taking than I'd say the average probably DM. But that's not even necessary.
Less.
Yeah, I would say we're different ends of the spectrum. There's like the middle. Connor's like napkin with paper at the restaurant, 16 words, he's got it. Me, I'm like, hey, my Google document is 16 pages long. I feel comfortable doing this. And there's a lot of in between there. Yeah,
like last session of D&D was I took down 0 notes. Wrote down 0 things. 0 and like if I don't know if there's anybody here that was a part of that party. A lot of shit happened. It was like, it's fine. I got it.
Lock in. Also, Connor's a good DM. Connor's a good DM. Let this be known.
Shit. It's on record. It's on record.
Connor's a good DM. There's different
for me,
styles.
it's just like a lot of things like are like for me like part of it is there's notes from many other sessions prior. This is kind of one of the sessions we talked about I think last time a little bit where it's kind of like you kind of plant seeds and then when it grows you reap them.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of those things happen. So it's like I don't need to take notes because I'm getting fucking payoff. I'm fucking feasting. The party's panicking, but I'm having
delicious. Yeah, he's out there just gobbing down, dude.
Yeah, and part of that I will say to kind of tie into it, that whole situation I wasn't planning on happening. What kind of happened is the party ended up being separated due to a random encounter happening to a degree. Another time, a player got a natural 20 on something that's been happening a while. The party has been tailed for like the past 20 sessions. Like straight up, it's been a while. And then he was like, oh, nat 20 looks back, it's like recognizes people from it's a sci-fi campaign from like 4 planets ago, and they were shady then. So like, we're gonna go beat their ass. And then all these things happen. They end up making friends with them. They end up because there's now a safe house that now exists because there's kind of some certain agents. There's a whole backstory thing for another character. Cool. And then that character stayed at the safe house because some heat happened and all the other characters left. So he's isolated in the safe house and I gotta do my horrible things to him because he's alone. It was really fun. But none of that could have for me at least, if I like really hyper planned out the environment and district they were in, like I do feel kind of constricted by that. So for me, it's very freeing to be like, these people showed up, and I want them to have like, the reason to be here, while loosely justified to be like, okay, I can make that very concrete now. Ties into this person's backstory. I can justify that if the party kills them, cool. But if not, they're going to be kind of rewarded with this other kind of resource they have in a somewhat dangerous environment. Here's another alternative place than the rest, and then the player uses it. Then I punish them.
And then I beat their ass with it. No, that's good, and that's kind of like why I'm even going back to what I was originally saying. Like that's why like my entire like world is not fully fleshed out to every detail. Right. That's why like story bits and like cities and stuff like you do your prep, but also be willing to like to almost like fill in the gaps as you go, because that's where I feel like it makes it very kind of tailored to the party. There's a lot of cause and effect. There's player action reward, player action payoff. There's all these different things, and also it just makes it for a lot more. Just a more like kind of back and forth storytelling experience for sure. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's pros and cons to both. I feel like, and I wouldn't even necessarily say that I over prep in terms of like rigidity. I just like to prep and have things down like in terms of like names, vibes, and certain things like that. Yeah, exactly. Things that I can just be like, hey, I knew this.
Yeah, you have those things very much set in stone, which is something that I have started doing a bit more, much to my protest, I will say. Only because like I don't want to be committed to that, but then I do it and it does help.
Right.
Just because like coming up with somebody's name, especially in a sci-fi thing, because you can just go like, it's Zilbor. Fuck, that sounds stupid. It literally happened. Because
not Zilbor, bro.
Like session 3. They went to like a robot fight, and I was like, and I had to come up with names of robots, and one of them was like, it's fucking Galazorp or whatever, like intentionally threw out a silly name, and I went, now it's a major catastrophic antagonist to the party. Yeah. This is one fucking like now it's like I'm stuck with that fucking name, and so, I can't it's like change it.
Yeah, you're stuck. Like, yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, but it's a fun thing in its own way, just like because like that's not something planned out, but I will say having names and such planned is really good, and having vibes planned out is for me the vibe is like the main thing, and I like to kind of read where my party's at and go from there. Like I kind of not as clinical as this, but it's kind of like an equation between like where I want to be and where the party's at, and I try to meet it somewhere in there. You know, like I want this place to be really dark, the party's feeling really chipper and exciting, so I try to like walk them to where I want them to be. You know, with what the area. And another thing I kind of brought it up, but just to kind of hammer this a little bit home, is we are kind of talking about cities in a very static place. This is the city as it is. You walk into the town, this is the city as it's been for a multitude of months or years, whatever it is. Especially with the inclusion of the party, and certainly with the inclusion of what the party's there to do, that's going to change.
Yep.
Like, maybe they got there, like, hours after a catastrophe happened, so they never got to see the city as it used to be, but they are seeing the city as it is true to them, as a catastrophic environment. But also, like, you go there, you show up, you're in a tavern, whatever, you leave, you come back, the dragon has attacked now. Like, you missed it.
Yeah.
And now, like, vibe's a little different.
Vibe check, everyone's dead.
Yeah. Ale's gone, people are pissed.
Yeah. I will. That's a good point too, and we mentioned it in like other things, like character actions and making the cause and effect for those things. And I think cities are a big point. And I think cities are such a focal point of stories, it's the hub for NPCs, a hub for interaction, for role playing, and I think it's also really important to have cities fluctuate with the party's actions as time progresses too, because to see a lot of that payoff and like how a party did good or bad, or how they have personally affected a city, can be very like rewarding or very cool to see from the party's perspective. You as a DM too, and even you kind of need to think about that as they leave, and maybe you're like, okay, like maybe like what this has done and how this kind of progresses while they're gone, and also what you can do to then propel the story with those bits if they come back and be like, okay, so this is how you left it. Now this is what has happened. Now here you are. What are your choices from this point?
Right, like maybe they overthrew a tyrannical ruler, and like maybe a shopkeeper or like somebody they worked with took over, and they come back. You get to see the rewards of that. Like like I do joke around a lot about punishing players. I think it's something really incredible about being able to reward good behavior in that way. Like they come back to this thriving town. Maybe the person's at a place of power to some degree. They can actually physically like help the party with their new, larger challenge and all that. And all that's really good. Like you want to reward that. You want to reward, you know, like good intentions and good behavior. You know, like just like good actions, I guess, from players. You know, like taking interest in investing in something. You know, even if like they were just doing it because like they wanted money and that was the job they were there to do. They did it. You know? Well, the guy was a dick, so we killed him anyway. And like I guess we helped out.
Yeah, I guess we helped you, but we wanted
like,
to do that too.
Yeah, but like the action they did though was still a good thing. It's always good to kind of reward that. At this on the same token, man, you could kill somebody from a party's backstory and it's gonna kind of suck. But if you kill somebody they got to learn and know, and like have fun with and go on an adventure or two, and then you ice him,
yeah,
that's pretty fun. And like that's something to do lightly, but it's certainly a way to like supercharge very specific motivation for me.
Yes, 1000%. And that's kind of like, and like also like in tandem with that, showing the party direct kind of consequence of their actions if they were to negatively interact with somebody. Say they swindled the shit out of like a merchant, or they stole from somebody and they found out, or something happened, and then you know you come back and the like you know the repercussions. It could even be as simple as like you stole from a place, no one found out, you left, and next thing you know come back and like you're like a wanted poster, like they want you. Now you have to like they have to pay like reparations for something simple like that. There's so many things you can do there, and I think cities are such a good focal point for storytelling and really breathing life into your world, and just having them almost be these hubs of just like cause and effect of actions, role playing, obviously kind of resting and restocking. Like cities are such a crucial part, I feel like, of D&D, of role playing games, and so that's why it's always like a lot of fun to be able to kind of build them up and build them out into, you know, these various degrees, which is obviously kind of why we're doing this episode, kind of helping people out and building that up and kind of the things to think about. We do need to wrap up. However, I think this is very important, and I know this is very important. So political structures. I think that the hierarchy. What?
I'm fucking with you. You're good.
No, I know. I don't want to head out either. But dinner's smelling pretty damn good, bro. So.
Oh. Shit.
Yeah, I know. Okay, but I do want to give some highlights to overarching powers, political structures, the kind of the ownership of cities from different factions or people. Do you want to kind of talk about a little bit of the process that you use?
Absolutely, yeah. So for one, again, I do play more sci-fi game, and kind of what that naturally entails is you're probably gonna have a lot more of a like hands-off government in those kind of systems. It's less localized. Just because, you know, as society expands, things become a lot more streamlined, things become a lot more bureaucratic. The guy you are dealing with is never the guy who made the law, collecting the taxes and all that necessarily. At the same token, I love the Western aesthetic of like the sheriff. There's the fucking sheriff, and he is, as far as he's concerned, he's the law. And there is, yeah, you know, he's keeping the law, the land, and all. As far as the law, gun, you know, that type of thing. So you could have it just be like. On that note, it could be like, yeah, there's somebody who's ruling over the town, some type of magistrate, some type of mayor. There, you got guards kind of running around. It's either as corrupt or as not as corrupt as it'd be. But like the person the party's going to interact with is like the law enforcement, like the sheriff or the deputy of the sheriff or whatever, like physically meeting up with the party, like checking out, like strangers rolled into town, just wanted to give him a friendly hello, just super like he's giving them a friendly hello while also giving like showing up with like 8 guys to say hello to the armed strangers who showed up type thing. I love that. As far as the city, like what kind of happens with the city is you do kind of create an environment where you're kind of inviting there to be a power imbalance between the martial side of the law and the actual bureaucratic side of the law, which is a lot of fun. I like doing that, even if they're both against the party. Like having squabbles between them or power dynamics between them is good. I do also like sometimes the system's working. Sometimes you show up, it's the Duke, he runs the keep, he runs kind of the yard and everything out there, and like you know, it's you're not really seeing. You got laws that are weird, you got like local laws that are weird, but like it's not really showing itself. It is just kind of the land. Like, you're gonna go to jail if you do like obvious shit. And like, oh, by the way, like Sundays businesses are closed because it's like religious observance, you know. But like that's like as complicated as it's gonna be. Like it can be simple if the story isn't going in that direction. Just mine, normally the party shows up and they're in direct opposition of whoever made the law on not shooting somebody.
Yeah,
so I do almost always have to make the laws like he's got to be kind of a dick because he's gonna get gunned down, and I'm not trying to. I don't want to be like, dude, he's a volunteer firefighter, like on the weekends.
Oh, you gotta
like,
do it next time.
Yeah,
dude.
he just has a home of he just keeps fostered puppies. Like he has like 50 of them on his big old yard, running around, having a good time. And the party's like, yeah, but
not our problem.
Yeah.
No, I think
God's gotta eat.
Yeah, I think that political like structures and having those fleshed out, or having an understanding of them for each town and how they fall into the grand hierarchy of whatever the region or the planet or whatever it is that you're running kind of game is. I think it's really good to just have like a brief understanding about, just so that way if push comes to shove and the party starts going vigilante crazy motherfucking psycho mode, then you kind of have an avenues to understand how that would be handled. Because I will say, early on in my DMing days, I'll never forget when like they would do something and I myself am too afraid to confront them, like my friends at the other end of the party, to be like, hey man, don't do that, as a guard, you know. And like there was a little like it was kind of hard to be like, hey, stop having your fun because you're fucking up my world. And so you know, there is a little bit of awkwardness to doing that, but as you kind of have that and as you kind of get a little more firmer in your actions and go like, hey, like this is how your actions are, you know, the consequences of them, I think it makes it a little bit easier, and kind of having everyone have that understanding too. Because I'll never forget where I'm like, yeah, don't do that, and then they're like, I don't give a fuck, and I'm like, all right, the guard leaves, and I'm like, ah, shit, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I get that, because there is like, because as a player, there is just kind of like, especially when you first play, it's just like, oh, this is like a role-playing game, but I could do anything.
Yeah,
I'm gonna take this. Is this mug glass? Oh, it's metal. Oh, it's like rare dwarven metal. Is it heavy? It's going through that guy's head. Like I'm gonna, like I'm just gonna do that. I can't. And like the guard's just like, stop. Like fuck you. Like it's so easy as the player to just like fully embrace that.
Yeah.
And as the DM, you're not able to sink into a character. You're kind of managing. You're puppeteering a lot. So it is a harder thing to like be in the character of the guard who has a vested interest in the tavern not being burnt down after the bartender kind of tried to assassinate somebody. If I recall, he went to steal all the gold and got away. I don't remember. It was like our third set. Might have been our first session where we met in the tavern and burnt down the tavern we met in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about right. See, that's so I would say I think having that understanding and just that it'll kind of give you a little more confidence, and also being kind of firm as the overarching authority, and also kind of everyone understand like you guys are all role playing. You're role playing. Like I for the Red Mire, man. Like I really enjoyed when Braff and Gallon were like confronting the Baron, and you're just like, fuck you, no, and we're like, dude, stop, and you're like, absolutely the fuck not. Like I'm like, you were role playing very well, and like you're getting upset. I'm like. We're at the point now where I'm like, I know you're playing a character, but a little bit inside, I'm like, oh, is Connor like actually pissed off right now? But we had that back and forth, and we were kind of getting irritated. Yeah. So I think that's just good. Like if like things are getting heated at the table, you know, and like in role playing, also make sure after the fact, like, hey, like everyone's good, because you know it's pretty easy to, especially as a player, you're playing almost like yourself in a different visage, you know, so you can get kind of emotionally invested. So just be cognizant of that.
Right, but and I would say as the DM as well, like it's super easy, especially if you like haven't encountered the situation before. As you said, the situation of like the guard not being firm, or when you have like a grand plan for the big bad evil guy that just got so close to panning out, and then the party foils it, or even worse, completely sidesteps and ignores it, to get like emotionally affected by that. But at the same time, like for what you could. All like 100% use it if it's like a thing you feel comfortable doing, like you're frustrated about it. Oh yeah. And if the guy's frustrated too, like feel free to like be frustrated through him, as long as you're not like being addicted to the party. But also like after that, like you're more than free. Theoretically we're all adults, but even if you're not, like feel free to like check in like afterwards and be like, hey, like it got a little like are we good, like what's going on, like the example of like the guard not being firm, like as the DM after the fact, you'd be like, hey guys, like you know, like you guys are kind of going a direction and didn't really want to go down. I thought we were going to be like a more heroic party and all that. Like,
yeah, be transparent.
We don't need to undo anything we did, but like, yeah, I want to make sure like we're still trying to be like heroes and all that. I know we're having fun. You know,
doing check-ins 100% after the fact,
yeah.
or like even like amidst it, just being that, having the communication, which is a big thing we highlight here on the channel. Just like communication between DMs and players will help mitigate a lot of the frustration and just angst of like, all trying to like, have fun together and play, be in this world, but also everyone getting, kind of what they want and what they kind of, their intentions of playing and what they're kind of wanting to experience. As long as there's communication, I feel like it can be like very easily, everyone can get their way in a way.
Right.
Also, one more thing kind of on the guards thing, because I think this is kind of important. Also, if your players are just like, and you're just getting like tongue twisted and your players are just shitting on you, in terms of like, in terms of, or shitting on like a NPC, like they're just like, wordsmithing and they're just silver tonguing, like just make your guards or whoever have actions. Just make them take actions. Because like, there's a certain point like in real life also where if someone's just like, outwitting you or getting you riled up or whatever it is, you're just gonna eventually stop talking and start doing something. Especially if you're a law enforcement, especially if you're a cop, especially if you're a guard in the city, dude. You're just gonna eventually be like, hey, fuck this. I'm just going to now use my authority to negate this situation. And like the players want to like sit there and have that dialogue, and you're like, the guard just grabs you or is gonna grapple you and like handcuff you. It's like then at least you're now out of that dialogue, and then there's like at least like a direction now this is going, instead of sitting there and bickering consistently, because that can also be hard, or trying to figure out how can I get my way through this. It's like that can be kind of, because I remember that was a big thing for me too early on.
That is absolutely a route. I think nowadays, this is again being said with a place of a little bit more experience. If the party's talking enough shit to the guy, and even I myself am tongue twisted, I might just let him talk him down. Like another way you can break it up is like roll persuasion or roll intimidation or roll decept. Like ask for that roll and break up like give for a minute, you get a break. And also like if they're fucking smacking your ass there, like
that's so
you
true.
Up,
that's a very good point.
If they're doing that, you want to break it up, and also like sometimes let them, dude. They fucking owned your ass.
Yeah,
like, you're sitting
that's
there. It's like,
point.
Are you supposed to be holding that fish? It's like, man, your mom looks like a fish. Get the fuck out of here. Like, let them burn your guy. Somebody's like, fuck, man, and like he like just walks off like ashamed because his mom looks like a fish now.
Yeah. That's actually a very good point too. Yeah.
Like, make it a rule. Don't like just give it to him, but make it a rule for one to give yourself that breath and break, so you can like get yourself in that headspace. Is what it is normally for me. And then also like if they get a high enough roll, give it to them, man. They're dicks, and they stood on business, and now here we are.
Yeah,
they're walking away with that weird looking fish.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to even that role can be that like dividing bridge of like, okay. How should I act next? Especially if you're a little, and that's actually kind of just in DMing in general, D&D, interacting with NPCs. Like, if you need to kind of get your brain to catch up a little bit, make them do a check. Like, have something else go on, and then come back and kind of dial it back, because that's a good way you can kind of circumvent the back and forth, and then it just kind of gets awkward or heated or whatever it is.
And part of the reason I do suggest that is because I know as a player, I was rolling hot. I was getting some good burns in, and it's like, ask for a roll, and I'm like, man, it kind of ruined my flow a little bit, which is good. I don't, like, the game's not about me, it's not about my character, it's about me, normally, like, 3 or 4 of my other friends, and then the Dungeon Master. All of us are trying to have fun and tell a story together.
Yep.
Like, I don't need to be sitting there just like, dude, I said that guard just looks like his dad was a tree, and he started crying. It was a lot of fun. I had a good session. Nothing else happened. But I did that.
It was an hour, 2 hours of that, just that. But yes, recap real quick. The political structures I do feel like can really emphasize certain points that you're trying to make in a city. So I think utilize those or don't. I just think having a little bit of an understanding as to what it is going in can be helpful in terms of just like if it comes up. But also feel free to go in depth or as in depth or as little as you would like to. But I think that political structures are very important. For cities to kind of just operate, and just if that's something you want to lean into. Also kind of a lot of fun in terms of making your game kind of go around them. Like for instance, Sir Denrick, portion of his backstory was him going to these holds to talk to the leaders of these areas. So you can do certain cool things to tie them in. And then very last thing, because we do need to go, is guilds and like organizations within a city. also a very good thing to kind of sprinkle in, kind of give them outside influence in other realms of play, whether it's like an underbelly, like, you know, like thugs, mercenaries, whether it's a religious guild, like a merchants organization. Having those things that are in your cities or occupied in your cities can also help breathe life into them, give you avenues of side quests, and kind of just make it just like, it almost expands the influence of a city or of the world, right? Because you could be like, oh, this is a one hub of a merchants guild that's here. Oh, and you run down the road and you're like, oh, I did some work for your sector over this other city, like, and you can kind of like keep that alive throughout the world. Connor, you can go and talk about guilds and organizations for a bit, and then we'll hop out here.
I make mine stupid as fuck. I love the idea, like, as you were talking about guilds and unions, I'm just like, how fun would it be to have, like, a thrift shop union who heavily monitors and protects antiquities, like antiques? It's like, no, that toaster's ours. Like, you fucking, like, yeah. Like, I love the idea of making them really silly and stupid. But that doesn't mean, like, they could be fantastic, especially, like, if you have, like, competing, like, magical guilds. Like, you can have, like, the sorcerers, or even sorcerers, wizards. You could go along those lines. You could go with people who say, like, there's, like, a prophecy of some form in your world, going that route. And you just have two schisms that have turned into full guilds to just believe different interpretations of it, that both could be right in their own way. Or it could just be, like, it could be the ice reelers. You know, it just could be, like, dude, we're fishermen. We just kind of, like, it's a conglomerate. Like, we just kind of just all do trade, kind of, we control the market here. You know, especially in the fantasy world, like, most things are decentralized. It's kind of just a local group. So, like, especially you traveling place to place, like, you might see different groups that are connected, but not talking all that much. And so if you maybe, you know, killed a member in another town, you beat the news there. You can work with the other people to find out. Or
you can pit mining companies against each other too.
Or you could always do that. I recommend it every time, even if they're friends. But I think the best thing with guilds is just like, it just is like a structure, like it could be a reoccurring character in its own way, if not a flesh and blood character. It'd be like a thing you keep interacting with. Different towns have it, different things have it. They have their set vibe, and if they kind of come around enough times and the party chooses to interact with that guild enough, or there's a DM, you want them to go that route, then they have faces and names and creeds and all that such.
Yeah, one of the big kind of proponents and kind of pushers of a story that I literally had was a guild of was the Azran's Angels, which was a guild of paladins and clerics who were literally like, hey, this threat, like, they were teaming up with the guild to fight this threat, and they're a very big portion of kind of the hand in hand of them figuring out information, who they were working for, and then ultimately who they kind of allied with to fight this BBEG. So that's a big thing that you can do as well. But it kind of, like with anything in D&D, scales, right? You can have literally the antiquity merchants of Galazaborp, and then that like defend toasters that are, you know, more than 30 years old, dude. And you know, or you can have, like, you know, the Emperor's Chosen that are the only three people in existence, and they're like the most like you know, full of accolades, and they're like the defenders of the realm. You can just, there's the scale, right? And then you have people in the between. So, but they're very good in just kind of giving more interaction and more things that you can, as you know, that as a DM you can build into the world, give the world lore, give places backstories, and give your players things to mess with.
One other thing I will just kind of inject into that is, especially if you have a big bad evil guy or a villain of some sort who is on the manipulation side of things and kind of plays a subterfuge game, having using a guild to kind of like telegraph that, or kind of like let the party deal with it. Because maybe the guild is like, it could be like an inquisition of some form, of just like that in this version of a fantasy story is the objective good guys. Let's just pretend for a minute, and they're just out there hunting demons and such. And then there's like a schism happening in the center of it. And as you dig deeper and deeper, you find like a thing or even a person is kind of like pulling the strings and pitting them against each other. Yep. You know, it's like maybe you're not dealing with the bad guy then, but you're dealing with a thing he's trying to do. It pushes the story forward. And you know, it kind of allows you, like as a dungeon master, make the city more lively, because this can all happen absolutely in the headquarters. It doesn't have to be out in it could be happening in the city, which in that case makes combat a lot more. I would say it often has a lot more impact. Yeah. And then one kind of final note with guilds and various organizations you can go, you kind of sprinkle in. That also gives a really good avenues for your players to multi-class.
if you have a paladin guild, if you have a you know, like a rogue kind of underbelly, if you have like a range, you know, like a hunters rangers guild, you know, a fighters clan, you know, you have all these different avenues of people who come together and kind of form these groups, and it gives your kind of players avenues to be able to kind of express themselves in different ways and be like, oh, I kind of want to do this, and you're like, well, you know, they can find leads, you end up meeting with this guild, then you can start doing, you know, building rapport, and that's how you can open up those doors. Because we mentioned it before, but I like to have it when with my players, if they want to multi-class, they need to have kind of an in-game reason or a backstory related reason or something that they're doing that kind of justifies that reason. And so having guilds and having various organizations or companies kind of be that avenue of them being able to do that is also a very good idea. So
absolutely, yeah.
Dang, dude, I don't gotta lie. I think we could probably keep talking about cities some more, but I think we'll have to cap it there, bro. Cities, I just like are one of the, I feel like the heart and like the heart and kind of like the blood. What am I trying to say?
No, not sure yet.
I'm trying to figure it out too, bro. Don't worry. No, I think cities are super important in D&D. It kind of gives you almost like this this nexus of all these different things you can do. And so kind of building them out, kind of having understandings as to like what you can kind of offer within them is super important. And it really, I mean, yeah, it's freaking awesome.
Absolutely,
dude.
I love them. We're sitting here. I have a lot more I could talk about too. So
we'll have to maybe do a 2.0 on cities, bro. Because cities, you can.
We'll
I mean, or we could do the subsection of cities, and then each subsection. Now we have guilds, and we can go through. We can go through all of it as well.
For sure, we definitely have the capacity to do it. Yeah.
We do. But I would just say keep it kind of light, keep it kind of breezy, you know, keep it loose, man. Like you don't gotta over plan it. It'll be crazy. You don't gotta do all this craziness. I know cities can be kind of daunting, and that's a big reason why like I don't super flesh out my cities until someone's going there, because I'm not gonna sit there and map out 14 cities all in depth as a city that the players are going to. That right there will free up a lot of the stress. That's why, like, honestly, I'll have like, oh, Drakenheim. That's going to be over there. All right, that's name, geography, vibe. And then until the players are going there, that's when I'll start to actually build it out. So, and kind of like what Connor was saying earlier, too. Like, I won't really fully, like, give too much information about places unless directly asked or described or unless it correlates with something. So, that can kind of help a little bit, too.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure.
So, yep. Building memorable cities. I'd say that's all she wrote, but there's definitely more. So we'll have to hit it up again.
It's all she wrote, aside from several amendments
that may happen exactly in the future. But we appreciate everyone for hanging out with us. Game Masters Vault, thank you so much for the follow. Appreciate that support. We're gonna head out here for tonight. Tomorrow we should be doing an ARC episode. Check the Twitch schedule for anything upcoming. And yeah, we appreciate everybody. We hope you all have a wonderful rest of your night. We will catch you all next time. Take it easy.